Okay, so in this video today, we're here to answer the question, should you sell your home? And you may already know the answer to this, but if there's any little bit of gray area that you might have to answering this question, I really encourage you to stick around and pay attention because I have a ton of information and different perspectives. We're going to look at things from the perspective of the financial situation in terms of if you decide to sell your home, what that looks like, and all the things you might want to consider financially that you may not have thought about before. And then we're also going to look at what it looks like financially if you decide to sell your home and possibly if you decide to rent it out. And then we're also going to take a look at what it looks like mentally, emotionally, and the physical labor in both situations again. If you choose to prepare your home and sell it, or if you choose to hold on to your home. And there's a lot of really good information in here. It's going to take a while to get through it, but hey, this is a really important thing that's happening here. This is your home, probably one of your largest financial assets, and can also have an effect on your sense of groundedness and stability and well-being in life. So let's really take the time to dive into all the details that surround this question. All right, let's get into it. So the first question we're asking ourselves is, should you sell your home, and what it might look like from the financial side of if you decide to sell your home. Now, we want to understand what's the profit that you're going to walk away with at the end of the day, because it doesn't matter how much you're selling your home, that still might have not the biggest influence in terms of how much money do you walk away with at the end of the day. That equation is how much do you sell your house for minus all of the other expenses that come up when you sell your home. And then that leaves you with some amount of profit, hopefully at the end of the day. And one of the biggest things that's really going to affect that is that sale price. And the biggest thing that affects the sale price is how long you've had your home for. Because over time, there is something that's called appreciation. Even if you don't do anything to your home, every single year, your home is increasing in value. Well, it really depends on the economy and it depends on where you are. That is affecting that appreciation rate. But in Boulder especially holds super strong. It's one of the most solid areas in the country in terms of holding on to home value. Even when we've experienced tough economic times, whatever appreciation happened in the past, it wasn't a bubble. Generally, it tends to really hold on to its value. So if you own a home in Boulder, well, good for you. That's been probably a pretty solid investment. But in terms of what's going to make that difference between, what you sell your house for and the expenses, you want this to go up and up over time so you have more of a profit to walk away with at the end of the day. And that has to do with appreciation. Now, the general rule of thumb when it comes to appreciation is that you'd like to hold on to your home for 2 to 3 years, because if you buy your house and then sell your house pretty quickly, you may walk away with a deficit. You might end up owing money. It might just be a wash, or you might walk away with a tidy profit. Now, the answer to that, depending on your certain situation, it may or may not matter to you. But if it matters to you, then let's talk about a few more numbers around this. Now, again, with that appreciation, because you might be wondering, well, what has it been for Boulder? Most recently, in the past couple of years, this is 2025 at the point of this filming, you can expect around 5% appreciation. Now, before that, we were experiencing about 10% appreciation a year. But still, no matter what, Boulder tends to really hold strong in terms of the value of homes that are here. Now, of course, you can be making updates to your home that also might add to the appreciation of your house, but you want to also think about, yeah, I could sell my house for more, but am I actually going to walk away with a positive return on investment? And I do have a future video that will talk all about that. So if you're thinking of selling your house in Boulder or along the Front Range in the near future, you're welcome to go to my website and get on my calendar. We can talk about the state of your home, some of the updates, the state of the market, if you'd like a little bit more help in answering that question of what is your home worth. Because I will tell you, you can go to Zillow and look at a Zestimate, but that tends to be pretty off. It's notoriously not true. But anyhow, if you'd like to talk about it, we can. Now let's go ahead and look at the other side of the equation, the expenses. This is what's going to take away from that potential profit at the end of the day. Now, the biggest thing that is going to contribute to your expenses is your mortgage, or if you have any additional liens on your home. Now, these liens or your mortgage, you can think about it that your house is serving as an asset that is securing that debt. So once you sell your home, that asset's no longer there and you have to pay off these debts. So if you have any debt on your house, that is probably going to be the biggest thing that is taking away from that final sale price of your home. The next thing to consider that might be adding to your expenses when it comes to selling your home is how much effort do you put in getting your house ready for the market. For a lot of people, it's not a whole lot of money, but some people, they really are gunning for it and they're doing updates and they might be putting in a lot of money or just sweat equity, but we're really just focusing on the money perspective right now. So you'll know that for you, that'll be a specific case-by-case basis. Now, the next thing that is going to add to your expenses is how much money you might end up spending while you are under contract. The biggest scenario that comes up is while you're under contract, buyers have an opportunity to do a home inspection. And during that home inspection, they might ask you to fix certain things to give them a credit. There might be some negotiation and back and forth. Now, we're about to do a little side tangent, but I think this is super important, and I can't stress the importance of this enough. And that is disclose, 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 because this will save you money at the end of the day. And what I'm specifically talking about is you might think about a particular situation for your house, like, oh yeah, 5 years ago I had a leak, but I already fixed it. It's fine. No one needs to know about that. Yes, they do need to know about that because that could come up during inspection, or it could even come up a month after you've closed on your house. The buyers figure out what happened and now they want to sue you. So you need to keep goodwill high. You really want to disclose. And the best time for disclosing is in Colorado. There is a form called the seller's property disclosure that you will fill out before you list your home. And that is the time to list everything. And I promise you that will end up saving you money. Okay, let's talk about the next two big expenses that can come up while you are selling your home. Is the cost that you incur with a title company. A title company is important when you sell your home. They're the ones that are going to help pay off your mortgage. They're going to handle a lot of the paperwork. They're going to update records with the city or the county, make sure property taxes are handled. And you should expect to spend around $2,000 for that expense. And then the final expense that'll come up in terms of, these are all the more major expenses. There could be a few smaller things. But the last expense is commissions. And this is how much you choose to offer to your seller's agent and potentially to the buyer's agent. You may have heard all this talk about the NAR settlement and what's been happening in the news recently. In some respects, it's a little silly because unless you were, and I'm so sorry if you were not informed well by an agent in the past, you still have a lot of control and you've always had a lot of control. You are the one, so long as you have willing parties that want to play with you, you're the one who gets to decide. How much are you going to offer to your seller's agent, and are you going to offer commission to the buyer's agent, and how much? So this power is still in your hands so long as you have willing parties that want to come to the table and agree to these terms. Now, in terms of how much that costs, you should expect typically it's around 4 to 6% of that final sale price. So hopefully this is helpful when you think about if you're going to sell your home. It's not just, hooray, I sold my house for X amount of money. Okay, you might sell your house for X amount of money, but at the end of the day, we want to understand the profit. So as you think through what these expenses look like, hopefully this is really helping you look at those expenses and then look at what your house might be worth. And then that still might inform you, okay, I'm ready to move forward and sell my house. Or maybe you think, I don't really like how that equation comes out. And maybe you do want to hold on to it for a little bit longer. So I hope looking at this perspective and these ideas about numbers are useful for you if you decide that you do want to move forward and sell your home. Okay, now staying on the conversation about finances, let's look at things from another perspective. Maybe you decide that you want to hold on to your house. And if you decide that you want to live in it, well, then you probably already have a pretty good understanding of your expenses. So the ball's in your court there. But if you decide to rent your home in any way, let's have a conversation about that so you can really wrap your head around the numbers and whether or not this might be a good scenario for you. Before we get too far into it, I want to take a moment to talk about the difference between a short-term rental and a long-term rental. A short-term rental is anything that is less than 30 days, and a longer-term rental, you could be having a lease with somebody for month to month, maybe 1 year at a time or 2 years at a time. Any of those scenarios are considered a long-term rental. When it comes to Boulder specifically, I'm not going to get into the details about licenses and how all this works for different scenarios. I do have a past video, maybe it was from 2017 or 18. It's a little outdated now. I will have a future video coming up about that, because if you're considering the situation, then you probably have some questions around that, and I would like to help you answer them. But in this moment in time, we're just going to talk about the cost. We're looking at the financial side of things. But I will say, if you decide that you're going to live in your home and you're just going to have a roommate and it is a longer term roommate, then you won't need a rental license for that. But any other scenario, you're going to need some kind of license, and you'll have to get into that. Okay, so when it comes to the finances of this, just like in the scenario of selling your home, we're going to look at the income potential, and then we're going to talk about the cost perspective. So the best resource for you in this particular case, when it comes to your potential income, I would really head straight to Zillow. You could go on a site like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace to compare and contrast different rental options that are out there and see how you compare to that. But really, I think Zillow is great because you have a map, you can move around, and there's just a lot to compare pretty easily. So that's a good resource and a good starting place for you if you're thinking about potential income. Now, as you look at this potential competition for you and what you might be able to get for rental income, I really want you to keep a few things in mind. The first is location, because location makes a huge difference in terms of what you can rent your house out for. The size also makes a big difference, so keep that in mind. Make sure you're comparing apples to apples here. And then there is the perceived value, and that has to do with the quality of your home. And this is where I really want you to keep an unemotional mind. Just stay really logical about this, because it's interesting, both for any short-term or a long-term rental. Humans are interesting. We get really wowed by something that looks spectacular or modern or hip or interesting. And if your home does not fit that bill, well, then maybe you don't want to run in those circles, or maybe you do want to put some money in so you can have that level of competition. Now, as you're looking at that, I also want you to make sure that you're paying attention to booking rates if you're doing a short-term rental, because the booking rates in January or February is going to look very different from the booking rates in June and July. And you need to think about this potential income stream and what that looks like throughout the year. Don't just get wowed by some high number. Really stay focused on the reality of the situation. And one more thing, when it comes to income, there may be the potential for your home to be an executive rental. And if you're going to do that, that's when some larger company, they have people that come in and they need some kind of short-term rental, some sort of housing situation right away. If you have a connection, it's usually kind of hard, but you're going to need a connection with an HR manager usually for these companies. And you could potentially rent your house out for 20 to 30% above market value. But if you're going to be able to run in those circles, it's going to have to be a really good location. It's going to have to be like a higher tier home. It's going to need to look really nice. It's going to need to have certain amenities like a washer and dryer, maybe great Wi-Fi, maybe covered parking. But that is another potential niche scenario to keep in mind when it comes to potential income if you choose to rent out your home. Okay, so we talked about the income, but we want to figure out your potential profit. So let's start talking about the costs. Okay, in this portion of the conversation, we're going to separate it into a short-term rental versus a long-term rental. And with short-term rental, generally we're talking about sites like Airbnb and Vrbo. And again, the regulations are going to vary a lot, and it's pretty restrictive around here. So this may not be a super realistic potential for you, but I want to help you think through the potential financial side of things right now. So here we go in terms of the costs with a short-term rental. So first, you are going to need a short-term rental license. And the cost for this varies a little bit, whether you're in the city or whether you're in the unincorporated areas. In that case, you're just working with the county. But you could expect to spend around a few $100s for that rental license. Next, there are the costs to get up and running. Again, we talked about the competition and thinking about how much you might want to do to be able to garner a certain price per night. And for some people, maybe they don't have a lot of work to put in because they're not running in those higher circles, or maybe you're already good to go, but you're still going to maybe spend around $1,000 because you're going to need multiple sets of sheets, multiple sets of towels, a few different amenities, maybe a few different repairs to get your home ready. Whereas other people sometimes, I mean, they could be spending $20,000 easily. And in some cases, that actually really does make sense. Those cases are pretty few and far between, but there are people around this area who have put in that kind of money, and it has made a lot of financial sense for them. Next is the service fee that a site like Airbnb or Vrbo might charge. So there's the amount of money that you charge per night for your home, but then a site like Airbnb, they're going to have a service fee, and that's usually around 3% right off the top in terms of what you're able to charge per night for your home. Next are the state and local taxes to consider. In Boulder County, that's going to come to around 5% of that amount you charge per night. And in the city of Boulder, it's going to be around 14%. Next are the management fees that you might incur. And especially if you are remote at this point when you're renting out your home, you're going to need a manager. In terms of that algorithm and how often your home is recommended, the quicker that you can respond to people, that is going to make a difference. So you need to have somebody around who's really on it. And then if other issues come up, you need someone who has great bedside manner, is really cordial, is really helpful. That is going to make a difference in your reviews. And at the end of the day, that's going to make a difference in your booking rate and your pocketbook at the end of the day. So when it comes to management fees, there is quite a range, but you should expect if you're hiring a manager, it's going to be around 10 to 30% of that booking fee. And then finally, you're going to want to consider the cost of cleaning. And you're going to want to have cleaners, and you're going to want to have backup cleaners, because things happen and you cannot afford to have a dirty home when the next people come in. Now, the biggest thing, yes, the fees vary a bit from cleaner to cleaner, but the bigger thing that's going to affect that final fee is how large your home is, because you need somebody doing an incredibly thorough clean. It needs to be like to the standard of a hotel. You can't just wipe down some surfaces and take out the trash. So in terms of how much that's going to cost, it could take a couple hours to clean your home, or it could take 4 to 5 hours to have a deep clean of your home. So probably that's going to vary somewhere to around $100 to $400 every time your home is turning over to a new set of guests. All right, let's take a look at the cost incurred from the perspective is if you choose to go the route of having a longer term rental. Now, if you have a longer term rental, you are still going to need to have a license in Boulder City or Boulder County. And that license, again, is going to be around $200. The next thing, however, is what you might end up having to do to secure that license. In Boulder, we have a thing called being smart reg compliant, because we're very environmentally friendly around here. And then there's this outdoor lighting ordinance, because Boulder would like to maintain some of the dark sky effect. So depending upon the state of your home, when it comes to the smart reg, there's this whole list of things that can get you points, and you need to accrue a certain amount of points. So depending on the state of your home, you might already have all the points you need, or you may end up having to make some modifications to be able to get the amount of points that you need to be smart reg compliant and then secure that license. And it could be anything like adding some weather stripping to the bottom of your door, or maybe your home is in pretty poor shape, and to get to that amount of points, you need to put in all new windows, or you need to put in a new, more energy efficient HVAC system. In Boulder, the way that it works is there is a whole list of service providers who can come out and do this inspection for you. So the cost for them will probably be around a few $100s. It varies from inspector to inspector, but not terribly. But the real potential where expenses come into play in this scenario is if you have to make any modifications to your home, both to make it energy efficient and to make it dark sky compliant in terms of the lighting that you have outside of your home. The next thing you want to consider is whether or not you're going to hire a management company. If you choose to hire a management company, you should expect that their percent fee in terms of how much rent you're getting each month is going to be around 10%. There's a few other fees that tend to come up, but they're not as big as that overall 10% management fee, and those fees vary a little bit from company to company. And then the final expense that you want to consider is any kind of damage or updates that might happen over time. Now, same with when you're living your home. Over time, you might need a new water heater, you might need a new roof. That's sort of expected, but there also can be a lot more wear and tear on your home when you have renters in it, and you need to be ready to incur those expenses. But the positive thing is, at this point, your house is now a business. So there can be some tax advantages to that when you incur those expenses. Okay, so that does it from the financial side if you're thinking about renting out your home in terms of what the income might look like and in terms of what the expenses might look like. So hopefully this is helping you orient your thinking and you're having a sense of okay, here's what it might cost. Is this actually worth it to you? And again, I really encourage you to spend some time on sites online because that'll give you a lot of information in terms of what is the competition, what could you rent your house out for, how often could you rent your house out for. Don't just sit there with a pipe dream. Go in, build a spreadsheet, start to get some real information. And this can help you think through financially, anyhow, whether or not renting out your home is the right choice for you. Okay, so we've gone through all of the financial considerations when it comes to selling your home or holding onto your home. Now, let's take a little bit of time and look at things from the perspective of what it might look like in terms of the mental load, the physical load, the emotional load, whether you choose to sell your home or whether you choose to rent out your home. So let's talk about this first from the perspective of if you're thinking about selling your home. And in this particular scenario, I just want to offer you some permission if permission is what you need. Because if you're at all feeling a little bit unsure about selling your home and it's causing you some anxiety, it's okay to slow down. Other people's opinions here are not what matters. This is your money and this is your emotional situation. You are the one that has to deal with this at the end of the day. So perhaps you're in a situation where you know you need to move and it's causing you some angst about whether to let go of the house. If you think that you're going to move back in the future and you can financially swing it to hold on to your home, then maybe it does make sense. But in this situation, I want you to think about when might you be moving back and what might your needs be for your house? Because say you move back in 5 years and maybe you want to have some children by then. Maybe you want to open an in-home dance studio, or maybe you're looking to downsize and you want one level living. So think about that scenario and then ask yourself, could your house, the way it is today, or the potential that it holds for renovations, could it meet those future needs? And if that's a possibility, it's okay just to slow down and take your time, and maybe you do decide to hold on to your house. And then finally, another perspective I want to offer in terms of why it could make sense to hold on to your house. You know, have you gone through the process where you're going to do a whole big thrift store run? You're going to do a big purge in your house and you go through your home and there's certain things where you think, yep, that's easy. That's easy. I'm totally clear. These are things that I'm going to get rid of. And you put it in the donate pile. And then there's the next category. You're walking around your house and you're just thinking, I don't know. Maybe I want it. Maybe I have a dream for something. Maybe I'll use it. I just don't know. And so typically what we do in that kind of situation is we just put it in the maybe pile, and then the maybe pile goes in the closet, and then 1 year passes. But the beauty of that 1 year passing typically is you go back to the closet and you look at the maybe pile, and generally we tend to have a lot of clarity. You think, thank God I held on to this item because now I'm totally clear. I really am ready to pick up the tripod and start a YouTube channel. Or maybe you think, I thought maybe I was going to take up this hobby or use these skis or use this knitting set, but it's not really me. I'm not going to do it. And so then with a ton of clarity and a lot less angst, you had the space in your life. Now you have the clarity and you go and donate it. Now, obviously a house is a way bigger financial decision. It's not just like keeping some skis in your closet, but if you financially can swing it, then don't let yourself feel bad. This is your life in your scenario, your unique situation. So this is just a big old permission slip for you to give yourself some space and some grace to really make choices that are truly right for you. Okay, now we're going to stay within this financial, emotional, physical category, but we're going to look at things from the perspective of renting out your home. So renting out your home can take a large toll on you mentally and emotionally. And there's usually this spectrum of people who are really risk adverse and people who really couldn't care less. They don't care. Whatever happens, so be it. And you're probably somewhere along that spectrum. And I just want to offer you some information about some of the liabilities that you're taking on. And then you can reflect back to yourself of how does that sit and feel for you specifically. So first is just the wear and tear on your home. And that might not be a big deal for you. You just think, it's a business expense, whatever. Or maybe there's a lot that's really precious to you in your home, and that's going to be hard. And it could just be for sentimental reasons, but there also is a real expense. So perhaps if you have like a builder grade home, you know that you're going to update one day and it's not a big deal, then okay, maybe that also helps inform your decision. But maybe you do have a nicer home, really nice hardwood floors that you put in. Are you emotionally feeling okay with that tear that is probably going to happen on your home? The next is the liability that you take on just from an insurance perspective. And I want to hold the conversation right now to say, if you're going to rent out your home, please call your insurance company and update your homeowner's insurance. They need to know that this is no longer your primary residence, that you now have renters in your home. I would hate for you to try to make a claim and then your insurance company denies you because you didn't update your insurance. So do that first. But next, let's talk about the potential liability, because there are costs involved. You may have renters who created a leak in your house and they don't tell you, and now you have mold, and now you need to tear out all kinds of drywall. So are you comfortable with that? Because that could happen. And still, maybe financially at the end of the day, it makes sense. But can you stomach a situation like that and that potential liability? The next thing to consider when it comes to liability is to make sure that you are in compliance with Colorado's fair housing laws. In the past few years, Colorado has passed a lot of laws that have made it a much more renter-friendly state. And it is so important that you are in compliance, or you could end up getting sued. And I would say the first place to start is the state government website has a webinar. It's called Fair Housing 101. Take the time to sit down and watch that. Now, there are so many laws, you're still not going to remember all of them at the end of the day. So it also might make sense to have an attorney on hand. So when your renter reaches out to you at the 11th hour, before you fire off that text or that email, slow down and make sure that you have someone to talk to make sure you are in compliance with Colorado's fair housing laws. And then finally, when it comes to that spectrum in terms of risk aversion, let's talk about egos, because you might be a landlord, you're a human, you have an ego. There are renters, they're humans, they have egos, and you're taking a lot of risk in terms of who comes into your life. Even if you think that you're a pretty logical person, there are so many unknown, potentially explosive personalities that can come out of the woodwork. I used to be a volunteer mediator with the city of Boulder, and so many of our cases that came into mediation were between renters and landlords. And there were a lot of things that easily could have been avoided, so much unnecessary drama. But at the end of the day, you just had egos who wanted to fight, first before trying to find solutions. And so they ended up in mediation. And they could have ended up in court, and that could be you. So it's important to have this information so you can reflect back to yourself, what is your comfort level when it comes to potential risk? Okay, I think that about does it in terms of answering the question, should you sell your home? I hope this really gave you a lot of good information to consider and wrap your head around, whether you choose to sell your home or whether you choose to hold on to it for a bit. And again, if you're thinking about selling your home and you have any questions that you'd like to work through, please go ahead to my website. You'll find a place where you can reach out to me and get on my calendar. I'm happy to give you 30 minutes of my time, and I can give you a lot of information to hopefully help you feel like you're ready to move forward. But either way, whatever you choose to do, I really hope that this was some valuable information for you. And thank you so much for your time. I wish you the very best. Bye.